Hello, Linda. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Oh, I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Great. Good. Is it nice and sunny down there in Florida today?
It is beautiful today. It's going to be 80 and sunny in December, so I'm happy.
Beautiful. That is a blessing to live in that climate.
Yes.
So let's begin with just a few words about who you are right now, what you're doing, where you are, whatever you want to say about who you are in this moment so we can get a snapshot of you.
Sure. So in this moment, I'm a coach, I'm a mentor, I'm a realtor with EXP Realty, two different states, Michigan and Florida. I've been licensed in Michigan for 30 years. I left Michigan in April of this year, and the story is I was burned out in the real estate and I was struggling financially, to be truthful with you. My son was graduating college in December of last year, and he had plans to relocate to Kentucky, and I was actually in Miami at a coaching event, a Gina DeVee event, Divine Living, in December. And I declared it was going to be my last winter in Michigan. The final night I was at this event, which was a 3-day workshop, we didn't see the beach only in the morning. It was all day. And I had some epiphanies there. The final night, I was in the hotel restaurant, Italian place, and I went to use the restroom while washing my hands. And I had this download that I belong down here in Florida. Like, I belong down here. And so I decided to sell my home of 25 years because Josh was relocating. Everything was falling in place for me to leave Michigan. And so I did. It's a story. I had fear show up and different things. Like, realistically, I was like, oh, and I had just adopted a dog. My other dog had passed away in May of 21, and I wasn't going to get another dog. And everybody's, oh, you're getting a dog. You're so good with dogs. I'm like, no, I'm tired. I raised a son. I've had dogs for 30 years. I no. And then I ended up missing dogs. I was pet sitting for side money, and then I was fostering. And then you'll see him in a little bit when I bring him up here. He's over there playing. It was a lot for me to sell my home. And basically, I was listening to one of my spiritual books, audiobooks, while I was walking the dog. And she was talking, it was Sonia Cachette, and she's, "You accept the ebb with the flow." And that's all I needed to hear. And I went back to my home and started cleaning every room and taking pictures, and I posted my house for sale and I sold it. And then I flew down here and I was looking at homes, apartments rather, and I've never been a renter, and I was scared to death for that reason. And I'm looking from Naples up to where I am now in Lakewood Ranch, and the pictures look beautiful, but you get there and it's old and it's expensive, and I was, like, crying on the phone. But then I found this place, which is didn't check every box, but it was the newest, the cheapest, and the largest, and it's like a resort hotel, so it's absolutely beautiful here.
So you're just at the beginning of a whole new part of your life.
Chapter. Yes. Yes, I am, and then I just got licensed very recently to Florida because I wasn't in a giant hurry because, 1, there's 10 times the amount of realtors up in Michigan down here, and I just was, like I said, a little burned out, and then I just knew, though, it made sense to get licensed for numerous reasons, that I'm with a great brokerage. And then I went to this open house of this $1,000,000 home recently, actually, and she was like 23 years old and only in the business 2 years, and we had the best conversation, and she totally inspired me, and she had called an expired listing, and I was like, "Oh my god, I need to get my shit together and start selling some houses," and, it just inspired me. Different energy down here.
So you have two different paths. You've got the spiritual path and you've got the concrete kind of real estate path. So it'll be interesting to find out how you got to that place.
Yeah,
So let's go back all the way to where you were born and tell us a little bit about that time
everything.
in your life when you were a tiny person to coming up
Sure.
into childhood.
Sure. So I was born in Detroit, Michigan. My parents, my mother's side was straight from Russia, her grandma or her mother, so my grandma, and she was in the pharmacy. She was a pharmacist. My dad's side also was a pharmacist, but so basically no religion growing up. They were Jewish, but my mother didn't really know anything about Judaism and chose to have Christmas trees and everything. And then my dad was like atheist because of all the Jews that were murdered. And so they chose to raise us this way and basically tell us everyone hates Jews, don't tell anyone you're Jewish. So I only saw Judaism from my best friend in my childhood. And I saw Hanukkah and I saw Passover. So then when I was pregnant with my son in 97, I started to learn about Judaism because his father was Jewish. Anyway, lots happened. I was not really supervised as a child. I wasn't given a lot of the things that other children are given. And we moved around age 12. We moved twice, but when we moved at age 12, you wanna belong, you wanna fit in, and I didn't fit in because we didn't have the clothes and all the things that everyone else had, and so I got in with the wrong crowd, and I got into bad things and eventually drugs and I was a smart girl, like, I was really school was not hard for me, and then I was always good in math, and anyway, so I'm the youngest.
Can you
I
give us a
basic
story
Yeah.
about that? What do you mean when you say you weren't really supervised?
When I was 16, the car had to be home, but I could go back out.
Okay. So when you were a
This
little girl,
uh,
before you were a teenager.
I was fed and I was sheltered and I had a loving home and I felt loved. But like from teenage years up, I didn't have extracurricular things. I'm not a victim. I feel like everything happened to me the way it was supposed to. And now, like I said, I'm inspiring others, giving people hope and faith. I didn't have an ideal childhood. So for a little girl, like when other kids were like looking at colleges or doing their piano or their gymnastics or just healthy things, I was just running around with friends and trying to fit in and drugs and ended up with a terrible boyfriend and committing a crime and ended up in jail actually and not even graduating high school. And
Wow.
it's a long story, yeah. And it's very traumatic. I was carrying that around for years, even though I got my license and all the things, but it was every time I applied for a job, every time I was like, have you been convicted of a felony? It's a whole story. Basically, the attorney that my family hired told us that I would get this probation and no record, and then 10 months later, while I was in community college and working in different things, thinking that was what was gonna be the result, I walked into the courtroom and they handed me the sentence that I had to turn myself in, and I had 6 months to do in jail. If you do 5 months on
Wow.
6 anyway, it was work rela it was the point is, I was a suburban child, and it was an example. I was set an example of by this particular judge.
How old
But
were you
anyway,
then?
I was at that time, I may have been 18, but I was 17 when I was arrested and all the things happened.
Wow.
I always had an emptiness and a self-worth thing. I've been working on my self-worth, my self-esteem for years and self-love, and I had my son with his father. We didn't marry, we were engaged. I didn't marry him because I felt like it wasn't a fit and we'd end up divorced, and then it would be better for the child to be in 2 peaceful homes than one unhappy home. And the long story short is my son has been a gigantic blessing in my life. The Lord blessed me with him, and he's now an adult, a successful adult. And when I was moving to Florida, I actually hired an attorney to have my record expunged
Okay.
because I knew I was new opportunities. I wasn't going to deal with that. But yeah, I know what I wanted to share is just that I had some health issues show up in
Okay.
2011. That's the beginning of the spiritual, the
Okay.
deep spiritual.
So let's just go.
Yeah.
So if we go through, so your high school years were a little rocky because you were getting in with the wrong crowd. You fell into drugs, ended up committing a crime. Do you want to talk about what that was or just,
No, I'm not
okay,
gonna talk about what
it's
that
okay.
was, but I will talk about that. Yeah, there's no point. I don't talk about the past ever, actually. It does serve now to help inspire others and give hope to
Yeah,
people,
absolutely.
but it's not an identity. But for years, I was feeling shame around it.
Yeah.
And then recently with this coach, Kathy Heller, she's just being vulnerable and disclosing things that it's powerful. I actually posted on social media. I have a huge following. I've always been presented as this professional in real estate and this huge following and just a reputation of super honest integrity. I'm just like, that's just who I am. And I don't wear low couture, just everything. Like I'm a specific, very interesting person. And then I actually posted very recent on social media and I said, "You probably don't know this, but I don't even have a high school diploma." And I shared this whole thing about what happened to me. And I had so much compassionate
Oh,
people.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
People are just amazing how supportive they can be, especially when you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had that experience.
Yeah. Because for years, if I told like someone and didn't, I had friends that knew me for 10 plus years that didn't know that about me. There's no point in talking about it. Like my son would say, I'm different than I was 2 weeks ago. The past is completely gone. We don't live in the past.
Yes, that is true. So you ended up then to going to school after when you were in your early 20s?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, and then I became a pharmacy technician, and then I
Oh,
decided to go into real estate because I didn't love that. My mother did part-time real estate when I was a teenager. So I fell into real estate, and it wasn't like I wasn't an outgoing I'm more outgoing today and friendly and confident today than I ever was. It worked for me back then. It was good. I got my broker's license right away. Also, just because I was so young, and yeah, and then when Josh was born, I got out of it temporarily, and I kept my license, of course, and I had another business, a professional pet sitting business, actually,
oh. So
and
when
it
was your how old were you when your son was born?
I was 29,
Okay.
and then I turned 30 right away after 2 weeks after, so we're both Aries, we're both the same sign.
Nice.
Yeah, we have a lot in common. Yeah, but the health issues is when is so 2011, 12, I was battling a debilitating illness for 4 years, and that is what transformed because I was never taught to properly care for myself. I was then I quit drinking, not that I ever was a heavy drinker as an adult, but ever actually. But I quit drinking for 2.5 years. I did natural herbal. I lit my candles every Friday night, which I still do today, Shabbat, every Friday. And I did everything I could to heal myself. And then my father passed away in 2016. And I spontaneously went on this trip to Montreal, Quebec, and ended up coming when I returned, I attended this gratitude training workshop and it was very intensive. I was invited for this weekend and it was really powerful and shocking stuff, like a landmark. Are you familiar with landmark?
Yes,
Okay.
somewhat. I'm aware of it, but I don't know
Okay.
the ins and outs.
Yeah. So I did that and then I paid the extra money, the like 2,000 to do the 5-day workshop. And that was also transformative. The guys, so you identify yourself with that and it just, whoa. And I just said, "That's it. I'm done." And I went to a doctor and said, "Please test my blood." And the long story short is I stopped identifying myself with the health problem back in 2016, and then I had a boyfriend in 2017, and I had some it's a whole thing, but I've been spiritual, and I realize now that debilitating illness that took me down financially, emotionally, and physically, literally physically. All I did was work and take care of myself, period. Like I took care of my son too. And thankfully, his father was always there to take him to hockey and all the things,
So
help
what was
out.
going on with the illness? What were you experiencing?
So it was like a chronic, I don't know why I have a shoot telling what it is. It's so Lyme disease.
Okay.
And it because it's invisible, thing else,
Oh,
right?
no, it can
People
be
don't
I know this because my son had neurological Lyme. Very
yeah,
debilitating.
yeah. And so I was very weak and just some other things. It was a lot, just a lot. They told me I had fibromyalgia, three doctors, everybody was telling me I had fibromyalgia. I knew that was not it, and I finally took myself to a rheumatologist, and he looked at me with a physical exam and said it was fibromyalgia. I said, "No." He goes, "I can draw blood," because I had a whole bag of supplements I brought there. I said, "Please do." Draws blood, comes back Lyme, tells me it's rare in Michigan, which it wasn't, tells me did this additional test. And in the meantime, I had a friend out in Arizona, pharmaceutical sales rep, and he's look into that Lyme disease. So I started looking into it and all the puzzle pieces were falling in place.
Mm,
And I'm like, okay. So I start getting into the communities, the Facebook, learning, and these people know everything. They know
mhm.
they've read every book, they've gone to all the doctors, and they're like, you need to see a Lyme medical doctor, you need this drug. And so I go back to see this guy and he says, "Yeah, it's Lyme." And I said, "I need this drug and I said, and you need to see an infectious disease doctor," which they all said, do not go to. Anyway, I ended up, it was terrible. Like the first doctor I called, I couldn't get into till April, it was November. And the other doctor wanted $1,000 for the first visit. Everything was just, I had nobody. My son's dad and my son, they like laughed at me. They like acted like I didn't have anything. And it
Isn't that
was
funny?
terrible. It was terrible,
Yeah.
but
And isn't that interesting that navigating the medical system is such a challenge?
yeah, that was one of I honestly think overcoming all of that was one of the hardest things, as well as the background and the trouble that happened to me as a teen. Those are 2 very traumatic things that happened in my life.
How old were
The
you? 2011, you're saying? So
11, so we're in 20,
maybe like
about 10
late
years, yeah, in
30s,
the
early.
40s, yeah.
Yeah.
But guess what? It was all a blessing. It was a blessing because
And how did you overcome it then?
I did everything. So I took away alcohol, I did diet, I did spiritual, I prayed, I did the herbal, I spent so much money. Oh my
Mhm,
God, Mitzi. And then I found an alternative doctor, medical doctor who's also alternative. And I just did everything in my power. And
mhm,
then 4 years later, I was like, I'm done identifying
mhm.
myself with this. This was a huge blessing in my life because I would take these Epsom salt baths. I would just do everything self-care, and I learned to love myself and realized how I was poisoning my body with different things and alcohol, and it was just really interesting because that self-worth and self-care just began immensely at that time period,
Do you think that's
and
why you were presented with that challenge, that disease?
I think I was toxic emotionally, and it manifested in the body, and I may have been bitten. I don't remember exactly seeing anything, but I feel that I had a contractor at my home that would call me happy as a joke. That's how unhappy I was. He was one of my son's hockey friend's dad who did kitchen remodel, and he was at my home, and he kept calling me happy as a freaking joke, and it was sarcasm because he knew I wasn't happy, and it's like, I literally think I was so I don't know,
I think
it was
sometimes the
presented.
universe will give you these things because it's
Yes.
trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
And so if you spent all that time, you had a very traumatic experience as a teenager. So it seems like maybe that
Never got
yeah,
healed.
that was unresolved for so many years. And then it finally will show up. I feel like that happens when something is festering and you don't address it, it does show up eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. I do believe it. It's just wild because I remember the day, like, on the phone, "Oh, the first visit's $1,000 from this doctor and the other doctor." I couldn't get in for months, and I was like, "What am I supposed to do?" It was just
It's
it's
telling you to go
devast
inside. It's telling
Yeah,
you
yeah. I'm blessed to be here. Mostly, I'm blessed to be here from my childhood experiences with these boyfriends and criminal these because you go in the jail and then you end up semi-corrupt. I did come out and get my act together for my career and everything, but there was times when I was engaging with not good people.
I imagine it was a game of survival, though.
Absolutely, Mitzi. Yeah, absolutely. Right on. So that's how, I have been most of my life. And I'm just grateful. Like every day, I'm grateful. I live a very drama free, healthy life. I today don't drink. It's been a year and a half just for health. I'm in my
Mhm,
50s. You
mhm.
feel good for what, an hour? It doesn't serve me. I'm just very healthy, and health and wellness is huge in my life. Exercise
So
and,
you said you started to
yeah,
say, and I believe I interrupted you, that it was such a blessing that you had this disease or this
darkness.
experience with the
Yeah.
Lyme, and then it ended up being a blessing. So can you
Yeah.
talk about that?
Sure. Basically, because it taught me to take care of myself, to love myself, to prioritize self care, to be more respecting of my body, my time. So many blessings, respecting money, time, just health. Health is wealth. Health is wealth. Okay. You can have all the money. And if you are laying in a bed or you can't walk,
Yeah.
tell me health is wealth. Okay. That's priority. number 1. So, it just definitely woke me up to a lot of things, and then the spiritual started. And then I look back. I didn't know it at the time, but I look back more recent and say, wow, that was the beginning. That was probably God and the universe having me start to have be who I'm supposed to be and take care of myself and
So
all that.
when was that turning point in your life, that spiritual turning point? Like around what age?
I hired a coach in 2017, and that was the first real expensive coach, and she was spiritual, and I was in real estate, and I had a boyfriend at the time, and I invested a lot of money, and so I had to get my act together, and I started growing and evolving and learning about myself and realizing so many things, and I still am learning and growing and evolving, but that was the beginning, and I've been investing in myself ever since 2017 and reading books, tons of books. Now, I've been working on my mindset for many years because my home life in my childhood life was very negative and toxic and like critical. And I'm just saying, mostly, my dad was very pessimistic and this kind of thing. And so when you're in sales, you need
Mhm.
to be the other way. So I've always been feeding and listening to Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy and all of that for many years. So I love that stuff. But the spiritual, like Course of Miracles, like a lot of the coaches, right? All of these people I'm naming actually reference the Course in Miracles and reference the Bible and all that. But anyway, yeah, I hired coaches and then I've just been growing and learning about myself and realizing how I've evolved and how I need to keep going and all that good stuff. And I love inspiring others and I
Yeah.
love that.
It's interesting how you went into the field of real estate where you had to be an alternate persona. That's really interesting how that happened in
It
your life.
didn't happen consciously, though. It was like my mother. It was like I didn't have my dad would say, "Be a nurse, be a nurse, be a nurse, go to college, be," and it wasn't like, "What college would you like to go to? What would you like to be?" I'm just saying. I'm not saying it like my dad was a great man in a lot of ways. He was vegetarian. He was the kind, gentle. He put the spider outside. He worked very hard, but he grew up in the depression, and it was
Mhm,
like the money stuff, like the frugal
mhm.
stuff. I dealt with that, and I'm still the money story stuff's been something I've had to work on a lot. A
Yeah.
lot of healing around this.
Yeah. No, I think the money story is a big one for a lot of people. What kind
Huge.
of things do you tell yourself now to try to get into a good abundance mindset?
If you look at my YouTube, which I have some of my podcast episodes unedited on there, and a couple of them are coaches and they're fabulous. And they always talk about it's about gratitude. That's a really important factor for 10 plus years. So that started also with the Lyme disease, the
Mhm.
health issues. Gratitude. I would journal on that. When you're grateful, you attract more. So what else do I do? So little things. And then, oh, one of the coaches, she's like, it's a skill set to think big. It's a skill set. And not everyone has it. And I was just listening to Mel Robbins. It was just a funny thing that Mel Robbins posted on Instagram, a reel or something about choosing happiness and how she used to say, go fuck yourself. And she realizes we have to fight for our happiness. Like
Mhm.
we tend to be so programmed to be negative. So, anyway, it's about being present, gratitude, little things, indulgences. I buy flowers often for my home, just things that make me feel abundant
Yeah.
and just noticing. I'll be driving down, like today, I had this appointment and I'm driving down the road going, there's freaking palm trees and it's sunny out. Like I
Yes.
am in a beautiful place.
You are in a beautiful place. I listened to that episode that Mel Robbins had as well, the happiness one recently, and she said something that I've heard before. One of my favorite authors, David Foster Wallace, wrote about this and in a very famous commencement speech that he gave at Kenyon College, and he talks about that this is your default setting, the bias toward negativity and noticing what's wrong. And I loved that she talked about that, Mel, and it's just you can't hear it enough. It's
No,
some you can't hear it enough because it's not just like turning on a switch and suddenly happy or making a
right.
change in mindset.
Yeah.
It's
It's an
on
ongoing. We said it at the same time. Absolutely. You don't brush your teeth last week and it's good for now. You have
Yeah,
to do it every day.
that's right. I
And
always think of it, you don't tell your child you love them once and then they know.
no,
You're just
right.
you have to constantly say it, and you say things to yourself as well, and
Yes,
that's
and yeah, and self-compassion is so huge. Like anytime we want that inner critics going, it's exactly when you want to be kinder to yourself. You
mhm,
want to say, look at the positive things. I have a lot of spiritual tools here. Like I have every Gabby Bernstein deck of her cards. I have 15 decks of cards. Tosha Silver, a couple of her decks. So I have tools that I had morning routines and I would get up, and I still do, and I have set intentions and read something positive and do my cards and sit in meditation and just all these different ways to set
yes.
myself up to win for the day and to work on the mind.
Yeah, so what kind of values do you take from your childhood, or is it the opposite of those values? Which is true for you?
I choose to think of positive things that I did have growing up, but because there's always so much worse. There's people that were literally like had alcoholic parents, and there's authors out there like Ed Milet and different people who talk about their upbringings. And believe me, it could have been much worse. It was just truly lack of supervision and guidance as a young teen, which is very important. And then I do find myself being frugal at times, but it's smart, I think, in some ways. And then ultimately, like I'll have an affirmation that says, I am the best ambassador with money. Like I am the best ambassador because everything's perspective. I have an 800 plus credit score. I was one place, chose to sell my home. I could have done bankruptcy. I chose to sell my home, pay my debt, move here. I'm living in beautiful space. I wanna say something important is that when my son I made sure he had what I didn't have. Like, he had Sunday school, and he had religion. He had things I didn't have, and I didn't fight his father on any of that because why would I? And he had hockey. He had travel hockey. He had none of that even matters today. It helps a ton, but kids terrible things are happening with young adults, like 22-year-old killing himself. There's just a lot going on, but basically, my values are self-care, which my mother never took care of herself.
Mm,
Always doing for everybody else, never took care of she didn't care what she looked like, which I've always cared what I looked like my whole
mhm.
life. I actually had rhinoplasty in 2019. I've done a lot to try to feel more confident and love myself more and how I look and all that kind of stuff. But there's values that I took away that were positive as well as I was vegetarian for 3 years and I still would be doing that if it wasn't a protein thing and a
Mhm.
health thing where I need but I love eating plant-based. I really love it. It's very intuitively I prefer. So but currently, I am eating some things just so I can have more protein.
I've eaten plant-based as well. So it seems like you're just really in tune with yourself, like in tune with your body and what it needs and all of that. So that must be something that you really embrace.
Yeah, you're very observant. I'm actually extremely intuitive as far as what goes on. I was doing this amazing weight loss situation with an eating plan, and I've said, "Oh, this is all about self-worth." I clearly was having worthiness issues. Now I'm got it together. I started dating. Mitzi, I started dating and all of a sudden I'm eating. I'm overeating. And not because I'm on a date and I'm at a restaurant with them. I'm saying because it's affecting me emotionally.
Okay.
And I just have some healing to do around that. So
As a good thing or a bad thing?
I see it as a self-awareness and self-intuitively, I notice things right away. So I like you had pointed out that I was very aware, and I am. So that I love. And it's also something we need to practice, listening to
Mhm.
our intuition. I had this part-time job and I didn't even want this job. This keeps happening where like you get this job opportunity. And then I'm like, I couldn't tell if it was my ego or intuition that was saying, I'm meant for more and I should be doing something else and all these things. And then it ended up just not working out anyway. But ultimately, this other coach I interviewed, it's really easy to know the difference between ego and intuition. She said, your intuition is always for your highest good,
Mm.
always. the ego is there's fear in this. And because I kept thinking, is it ego thinking I'm too good for this job? Or is it intuition saying you should be spending your time? This is not, you should be spending your time on things that are, you're an entrepreneur, Linda.
Yeah,
So,
you have to listen to the inner voice. That's the guidance.
yeah,
You seem to be really good at that. It's when you're like that, when you're an empathic kind of person and you're very in tune, that doors will open, lots of doors will open. And it's sometimes hard to know which ones you're supposed to walk through because
exactly.
you tend to attract a lot of opportunities. So how do
Yes.
you figure that out?
You know how it's energy protection. It's just it and it's trusting in the higher power and trusting in faith and what feels right, what feels good. Yes, I do sometimes step out of the comfort zone and do things that are taking a chance, but because that's how we learn.
Yes.
It's really not just coaching, it's how we learn, like, life experience is exactly how we learn about ourselves, it's how we evolve and grow, it's so much. Those part-time jobs, I grew, I learned so much about myself, oh my gosh. But back to what you said, it's energy protection, like, I can only do so many things, and I really am very good at protecting my energy and being present and just trusting, like I said, in the higher power and, that the opportunity is right. And we just have to. I just had an email today with this guy been trying to recruit me in insurance sales like a
Hmm.
lot since I was in Michigan still. And I was thinking, I think it's because I have a real estate background, but I just finished the real estate course. I just passed the test. Like, I don't want to do another course right now. And I'm doing this podcast, I'm doing coaching, and I have the real estate. And I don't want to do that right now. But opportunities left and right, I have a for sure.
Good, because then you do get to go inside, listen to the voice that says, which way should you go? I think that's pretty hard to, I feel like you can be scattered if you don't
Yeah.
force yourself to be more in tune. You mentioned that did you do the whole Course in Miracles?
No, I never did. And I've never read the book. I'm saying that a lot of my coaches and spiritual leaders always reference. Like one of my she's helped me so much, is Gabby Bernstein. Do you
Yeah.
love
Oh,
Gabby?
no. Yes,
Okay.
I do. I love Gabby, and I did the whole Course in Miracles,
Oh,
in
okay.
2020, and
Oh,
it completely changed my life. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So powerful, so powerful. Yeah, just the whole message about love and fear.
Love and
We're just
it's about forgiveness. The main message is forgiveness and love. It's really it's an interesting experience, but you have to be prepared for it. It's a huge undertaking.
yeah.
It takes they say it takes a year. It took me a little bit more than a year to go through it.
Okay. So you didn't just read the book, you actually did a
Oh, no, I did
course.
well, the book is no, the book is like a course. Like it
Oh, I
goes
see.
through a daily sort of lesson,
Oh,
and
okay.
you do it over the course of it's I think it's 365 or so, I don't know exactly, but it's and then it has
Okay.
different sections in it that you read and study, and
Got it.
you need to take it takes a long time to go through
Mhm.
it. It's
Yeah.
really a mindset shift,
Yes. It's like
the
another
whole course.
Bible,
It really is.
and I
It's
love
very
it.
religious, very religious.
I've heard Marianne Williamson teaching it before, and I've seen a ton of quotes from it, and yeah, it's powerful, and I love it.
Mhm.
I love that. I was just dating someone recently, I actually finally found it attractive and, like, very short-lived because he has 0 belief in higher power. I just
Mm.
I don't know how I can be with someone like that. Not even open to the possibility of the universe being some kinda energetic
Being
nothing. So I'm like,
right.
"Yeah, I
Okay.
can't. I don't know. I don't know."
That would
It
definitely be
doesn't
hard.
feel great. Yeah. Doesn't
Well,
feel
you spent a lot of time over the course of your life coming home to that from parents who weren't embracing that. So obviously you wouldn't want to go back.
exactly. Thank you. You
Yeah.
just said it. Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned that your parents were Jewish, didn't practice. So now where do you find yourself? Like what's your religious home now?
It's funny because I had something at my home and this guy's, "What are you, Jewish, Buddhist? What are you? You've got Buddhas over here, you got the Jew." You know what? I align if I'm going to do something, I align with the Judaism, but I am just I guess it's like new age metaphysical. Actually, guess what? I take what I like from every different religion and I do that because I don't like how it has to be this way or probably Buddhism's more what I'm aligned with, but I'm gonna light my Hanukkah candles, and I light my Friday night Shabbat candles, and sometimes it's after dark, and if I've bought Christmas trees and put Hanukkah decorations on them, and I love Christmas. Christmas is beautiful.
Mhm.
I love Christmas, and I've gotten my son a Christmas present his entire life and Hanukkah, so he always gets a present. And my mother would in her defense, she's, "Oh, it's more fun," and we weren't in a Jewish neighborhood when I grew up, and we were not far from some, but our specific neighborhood wasn't. And also, I met someone down here who said, "Oh, yeah, we my mother collects," and they were Jewish family, and he's, "Oh, yeah, my mother collects Santa Claus." It's funny how you learn from other people, and you're like, "Oh, what my parents did wasn't so crazy," or
Yeah, I love that. I think there's so much beauty in celebrating different cultures and belief systems, and I am with you 100%. We have a lot in common.
yeah,
I also have many Buddhas in my house, and also I was married to a Jewish man. My ex-husband is Jewish, and my kids, one of my daughters took the birthright trip to Israel,
yeah, Josh
and
went to Israel.
yep,
She loved it.
yeah, she
I
loved it.
thought you were Jewish. The name Mitzi sounds
Yeah,
Jewish to me.
I'm not. I was raised more actually technically Methodist, so Protestant, but my mom has some interesting things around religion, which we could talk about another time, but
Yeah.
I was not raised religious either, but I do go to a Lutheran church now, and I have enjoyed the Jewish faith tremendously into many Jewish services and celebrations. And I also have studied Buddhism with a very prominent the Tibetan Society in New Jersey. And they are close affiliates with the different bodhisattvas and people that are right under the Dalai Lama. So it's very interesting. I embrace it all. And I think
Yeah,
there's so much beauty in it. So I can totally understand how you
I
love that.
agree. Yeah, and I
It all
always
shares a common message too.
yeah.
Feel like
Well, I was just gonna say that I always thought my whole life that religion was good, my whole adult life, because I was like, I just thought it's good. And my son's like in college, he'd come home from college and he's, "Oh, really? You think?" And I'm like, "What?" I go, "Religion's good. It's like gives," and then he saw my perspective, but his perspective is it's causes wars and
Mhm.
it's rigid, and so he had a whole other perspective, which made me think, "Oh, you're right, it does cause wars and stuff."
Yeah,
But
there's the difference between the more fixed-minded beliefs and versus a more spiritual approach, which I feel like you're
yeah.
saying you have a more spiritual approach,
Yeah.
a
Well,
more
I just think
open-minded.
children should have some kind of foundation where I feel like it's important to have something, but
Yeah,
versus
it
nothing.
it helps to answer those unanswerable questions that we sometimes seek to
Yeah.
have some connection with.
And then there's the programming where you've got like I had a course, The Joy Method for Abundant Living, and I gave it away to this woman who I met when I was selling stuff out of my home when I was moving from Michigan to Florida, and she and I connected, and she was, "Linda, oh my god, your course," because I gave her permission to prioritize joy. I gave her permission
Mm,
to take care of herself. All of these things that she had been programmed by her religion, by her culture or whatever to like none of that. And so she loved my course. So those are the people who needed the course, needed
mhm.
my course. And I'm redoing it and it'll be available again, but and I have a money mindset course, but yeah, so I just got into the coaching because like I said, I my first coach was so happy, so high vibe, and I'm like, I want some of that. Like I was attracted to that, and I just love helping people. It's a lot of fun, and conversations like this can go on for
Oh,
hours.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
love it.
Everything you're saying is resonates so much. I know there's so many people that need to hear it, and it's
Yeah.
just so many common things. So let me ask you some general questions. What or where is your happy place?
It's a great question. I love that question. I might have to add that to my podcast questions. I will say in nature,
Yeah.
at the ocean, in
Mm.
nature, being with my dog, being with him. It's like he brings me so much joy. Honestly, he's divine. He was divinely brought to me.
Oh, all right. Let's talk about that. I love dogs. I recently lost my little dog. I'm gonna actually get teary. Oh, I
It's
loved him
terrible.
so much, Owen, and I had him for. Ooh, he was my divorce dog, and I had him for. He was four. Was he 14? I think he was 14 when he passed, and just this year he passed.
Oh, I'm
So I haven't
sorry.
been ready to get another one because I do like the freedom of not having a dog.
Same,
But I
I did
will
too.
definitely get another dog because I loved there's just nothing like that unconditional love. That is it's just
Yeah.
it's not
Lucky,
replicable
come here,
in
Lucky.
any other way. His name
Yeah,
is Lucky?
Lucky. I named him Lucky. Lucky, come here. Show yourself. So this is my first true rescue. Come here,
Oh,
Lucky. Of course, who rescued who, right? Come here,
yes.
Lucky.
That's
Come
always a
here.
question.
Show her who you are. Okay.
Aw, look at
This is
you.
him.
Look handsome.
He's a black lab Chihuahua Corgi Rhodesian Ridgeback. Like I just had his DNA done, but
I
he
can
looks
see
like a
all of those
black.
things as you say them.
Yeah, he looks like a black lab puppy, but who's the best baby? Who had a tummy ache?
Aw.
And mommy had to he's the most affectionate dog that I've ever had in my life, too. And I had a lot of dealings with him because I never experienced, like, a fearful dog that had post-traumatic
He
whatever
was
he.
abused?
Yeah, that's
Oh.
obvious. He was abused by men and whatever, and but I took him to a specialist twice, and she helped me, and we just reprogrammed, and then I socialized him, so he's definitely great with dogs, and he's very food motivated. He's an angel. He's so good in the car. But I'll tell you real quick, the story is that I was the first dog I fostered. They gave me a puppy. I didn't want a puppy. I was pet sitting some other dog. It's a whole story. I was crying. I gave it back to someone else. And so he was the only dog that didn't have a foster home. That he came from Texas. I got him in Michigan. This rescue in Michigan they shuttle them up from somewhere in Texas. And his name was Buster. And I was looking at his picture the entire day. It was September 26th of last year. And I kept staring at his picture. I couldn't tell if he was a 60-pound, 12-year-old lab. I didn't know what he was. And it was 6:30 at night. I'm laying in the bathtub Sunday night, and I looked at the picture and I said, "Did anyone pick up Buster?" "No." "Do you want him?" He was the only one that didn't have a foster. I said, "Has he had a bath?" Thinking that they give them back, and she's, "No, he's still on the bus." And I'm
Oh.
like, "Oh, so he's on the bus." It was afternoon, they were picking up these dogs. And so he's sitting on the bus by himself in a crate,
Oh my
and
god.
so I said, "I'll come get him," and I came and got him, and he was so cute, and he was shivering, and I put him in my car, and I cried the entire drive home. He never moved from his seat. He's the best dog in the car. He doesn't jump, he doesn't look out the window, he doesn't bark, nothing. To this day, he was the perfect dog to come down to Florida. I don't think that I could have done the drive without him, honestly. We stopped in
Aw.
Kentucky, visited my son. Anyway, but the point is he changed my life. Lucky. Sorry. He's a little protector, but you're talking about me. But anyway, I don't know why I cried so hard the whole way home. I feel like, I don't know, but my other dog had passed away May of 21. It was my last dog. He was my maintenance at the end. He was amazing. He was my best friend, but he was a blonde schnoodle dog, and we had a black lab too. We've had dogs. My son has had a dog his entire life except for 3 months. But this dog is amazing. So it was pretty divine. I don't know who connected us, but he saved me and I saved him. So he's just an angel, really.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. And then every time I said the word lucky, he would just light up. So I'm like, oh, that's your new name. And because Buster was not gonna be his name, and he didn't know his name. I'm like,
Right.
"Buster? Oh my god, what kinda name is that?" It just sounds like you're in trouble or something.
Yeah. All right. So, a couple more questions.
Sure.
Where do you derive the most meaning from your life?
It's helping others, it's giving, it's serving, it's walking dogs at the rescue, which I
Mm.
started doing, and it's right nearby. It's giving and serving is the most. Absolutely. That's
I'm getting a message to just to say, I wonder if part of your coaching is coaching yourself.
Oh, yeah, of course. We all are healing and growing. Yeah. I literally listen to my own stuff. I do. I literally I did these interviews and then I posted just recently on YouTube and I'm freaking listening to them. I'm going, okay. And
Yeah.
yeah, I got to go back to my course. Absolutely. How about you?
Absolutely. 100%. Everything I write down, everything I create is for me.
Yeah.
We do it because it's what we need, but we're givers.
And we're serving ourselves 2 years ago or
Yeah.
ourselves 5 years
Oh,
ago.
yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. So, what are the biggest blessings of your life?
Okay, so I have been blessed with strength. I have been blessed with my son. He has been a huge supporter, inspiration. He's encouraged the vegetarian, like all the things, the no alcohol. I mean, and he doesn't do alcohol, but he's eating meat right now too. And he's just been an amazing supporter overall. Just a beautiful blessing of joy, just raising him, even everything. And my dogs, all the dogs, and then this dog, my health. I feel pretty healthy. A couple of little things, but overall, I'm very healthy for my age. And my parents, like, there's just been rejection is protection. I didn't get into that. My mother's still around and blocked me, and I can't even reach her call. So that's a whole other thing, but I choose to just be present and be grateful for what I have and not focus on things I don't have or focus on certain things like that I can't do anything about.
Mm,
So we control what we can and we choose to let go of things we cannot control. But I think I'm an intelligent woman and I crave learning all of this. So this is really a blessing to me when I meet people like you and these other coaches and these that's a huge blessing that I was directed in this path.
yeah, I think that dynamics with our parents are a guiding light for us in one way or another. And it also teaches us something that I struggle with is the idea of non-attachment. When you are a very empathic, spiritual person, you have a tendency toward love and connection. And so practicing non-attachment is gives you this strange dichotomy of lessons that you have to learn, I think. I don't know.
The codependency thing is just a real thing that we all have. I had it with my other dog. I've had it like I
Mhm.
spend some time with my son. I'm very happy. I'm single and I'm happy. And then like I spend time with my son for Thanksgiving and we have this great time. And then he's gone and I'm like, now I want to go on a dating site because it's like I'm like which
Mhm.
I'm normally just happy alone,
Mhm.
and I have the dog and everything, but basically, what with the parents thing, I think they're imperfect beings, we all are, and I think they probably did the best they could have done better, but I feel like it wasn't like I don't know, like Tony Robbins says, if they don't do a good job, you can't do a mediocre job and expect repeat clients. Like, you have to do outstanding to get repeat clients. Just average is not good enough, to be honest. So,
I like that. I tend to agree. I have a pretty high bar, and it does cause problems sometimes, but it definitely shows you who is the people that are meant to be in your life. And maybe
yeah.
it's an easier way of discovering with less pain who isn't supposed to be in your life.
Yeah, exactly. We are all doing the best we can, but you wanna be a little bit less rigid in certain ways just because otherwise I don't know if you're in a relationship or not, you're going to be alone if you don't, like, make some compromises,
Mhm.
but obviously your integrity and your values are top number 1.
Yeah, and someone will respect that. So, what about the lessons? What would you say are your biggest lessons that you've learned over this life?
I definitely learned that I've always thought I was something I really wasn't, as far as I thought I was evolved a lot and this great person, but then I would realize that it's ingrained in me to be like so I'm very mindful of my intentions. I always have good intentions and I'm always like I've always been a kind soul and everything, always, my whole life, all right? Always a kind soul, but I don't do anything like, it's those rules, like, if it's not nice, if it's not important, don't
Mhm,
say it kinda
mhm.
thing. That
The Four Agreements. Did you ever read that book?
yes, I love that book. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Be impeccable with your word and don't
Yep.
take anything personal, all those things. But I just realized that because I grew up in a certain way, like, I grew up around manipulation. Let's be honest,
Mm,
let's be real, okay? I did, and I don't like it at all. And women in general, there's things that can happen. So I'm very streetwise. Like, I grew up by myself. Like, I've been alone a lot and I've had to learn a lot. And I always wanted and I've always had friends, always had friends. But the point is I'm just very pure in my everything, and I just like keeping it that way, and just I feel like the blessing, like the health thing, taking care of yourself and
And
stuff.
learn what have you learned? The lessons that you
Yeah,
say,
I
yeah.
just learned to, like, self-care, prioritize
Mhm.
self-care and self-respect. I'm happy to say no to things that don't
Mm,
serve me. I could be on the couch Saturday night with my dog reading a book and happy as can be, and someone's gonna call and say, "Oh, you need to come out. Oh, it's Saturday night," and all these things. It's, "No, I'm happy, happy. I
mhm.
don't care what this person thinks.
Yeah,
My happy and your happy are 2 different things. I don't need to be out and about. That's not my vibe anyway."
yeah,
So, things like
yeah,
that.
yeah, I like that, and I'm interested in what you said about the alcohol. 'Cause I'm feeling the same way that I do drink occasionally, but my alcohol consumption has dropped off a cliff. Like, it is toxic for me. If I drink, I feel horrible, and it causes other problems, like, in my body that I feel much more prominently than I ever did before.
Why do you think when you go to the doctor, they ask you how much you drink and how much coffee you have? Because it's not good for you.
Y
It's not good for you. It's
yeah,
toxic. And
and I
it's
it
just
is.
yeah, and it's honestly, it's society, it's social. You watch anything on TV or Netflix, it's like they just what's the word I'm looking for? Not idolize, but like glamorize it,
Glorified.
glorify, glamour. And it's like
They
I lost
do.
a lot of girlfriends when I didn't drink anymore. And that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
When, they love their happy hour and their
Yeah.
whatever.
Of those times that I had, but I find that I'm not even able to have that anymore because it just affects me too strongly now.
Yeah,
A lot of
lucky
the
you.
problems that I've had in my life have been around alcohol. I could
See,
totally see that.
it's good you're noticing.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
self-aware.
I have really enjoyed talking to you. I feel like we have so much in common, and I really resonated with a lot of things you're saying. You've given us so many jewels and treasures to
Thank you.
contemplate and hold on to. So thank you so
Oh,
much.
you're so welcome. Thank you for the platform. And yeah, people, if anyone's interested, they can go to lindabrandcoach.com and find me. And on social media, Linda Brand Coaching on Instagram and Linda Brand on Facebook. And you know what? It's just a wonderful that we're doing this,
Yeah.
that you and I are doing
And
this.
we've gotta uplift one another. I That's what it's all about.
Yes, Empowered is my podcast, by the way, Empowered, and it's all about empowering other women, and I love that. I love to compliment women and empower each other, and I was just walking earlier today and saw this girl, and she had the shirt that said "Girl Power," and I'm like, "Yes, that's what we need to do."
Yeah. I do that all the time. I'll just talk to people and tell them like, "Hey, your hair is fantastic," or "Wow, I love
Yes,
those shoes." "Great
exactly,
socks."
and you could just make somebody's
Yeah, just
day.
you do, you make somebody's day. That's the thing, you don't know what tiny little thing someone's gonna remember. They don't even know you, but they're gonna remember that tiny little thing. It's gonna carry them
Absolutely.
through. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you
Well,
so
thank
much. You're
you. Thank
welcome.
you.